I greet you in the love and the light of the infinite Creator. Event is coming soon. YouTube channel. Here's the latest intel.
America's looming war with Iran, what you're not being told. The mainstream media has attempted to frame Donald J. Trump's election victory as a sort of collusion between Russia and Trump, a scheme allegedly intended to promote an American president who would do Vladimir Putin's bidding. But the truth is that there is one other country that stands to be the prime beneficiary of Trump's reign as president, Israel. Under the Obama administration, the United States had a curious relationship with Israel. In 2011, Obama vetoed a UN Security Council resolution that would have condemned Israel's settlement expansion. During Obama's tenure, Israel's settlement population rose from 100,000 to 600,000. According to Obama's Secretary of State, John Kerry, no administration in U.S. history has done more for Israel than Obama's did. Our military exercises are more advanced than ever. Our assistance for Iron Dome has saved countless Israeli lives. We have consistently supported Israel's right to defend itself by itself, including during actions in Gaza that sparked great controversy. In 2016, Obama approved a record military package to Israel worth $38 billion, nullifying claims that Obama abandoned Israel following the decision to withhold its veto on a resolution marking Israel's settlements illegal at the end of 2016. As noted by Kerry, in the midst of our own financial crisis and budget deficits, we repeatedly increased funding to support Israel. In fact, more than half of our entire global foreign military financing goes to Israel. And this fall we concluded an historic $38 billion memorandum of understanding that exceeds any military assistance package the United States has provided to any country at any time. However, on the surface, Obama appeared to be at odds with Israel's Prime Minister Benjamin Netanyahu over one key issue, Iran. The Iranian nuclear agreement reached in 2015 was heralded as a progressive move by some, but Israel completely rejected it and has refused to be bound by the agreement. That being said, there is something Israel has done throughout Obama's presidency that has barely attracted a blink from the UN. Following the outbreak of war in Syria, Israel struck Syria multiple times, for example, during 2012, 2013, 2014, 2015, etc. Why is this important? Because Iran and Syria are bound by a mutual defense agreement. In fact, Israel assassinated an Iranian general in Syria in 2015 with little to no outrage from the international community. Sign up for the free anti-media newsletter the establishment doesn't want you to receive. A brief history of U.S.-Iran relations. Iran has been a major problem for the U.S.-Israel establishment for a long time. Iran's defiant stance and desire to control its own oil supply in the face of U.S. hegemony has been a big issue for decades, as has its proximity to Russia and China. In 1953, the CIA overthrew Iran's democratically elected leader, Mohammad Mossadegh, because he nationalized Iran's oil fields. As noted by The Guardian, Britain, and in particular Sir Anthony Eden, the Foreign Secretary, regarded Mossadegh as a serious threat to its strategic and economic interests after the Iranian leader nationalized the British Anglo-Iranian Oil Company, latterly known as BP. But the UK needed US support. The Eisenhower administration in Washington was easily persuaded. After installing a brutal US dictator in the form of Shah Reza Pahlavi, the people of Iran overthrew the Shah in the 1979 revolution and rejected almost all American influence thereafter. Shortly afterward, the U.S. backed Saddam Hussein in Iraq to take out Iran in a brutal and bloody conflict that lasted close to a decade, nearly killing off an entire generation of Iranians. The U.S. knew Saddam Hussein was using chemical weapons, and the U.S. also secretly armed the Iranians to maximize the death toll. Ever since the Iran-Iraq war came to an end, crippling sanctions and saber-rattling over Iran's alleged nuclear program have been the go-to mantra for the U.S. establishment. George W. Bush and Dick Cheney prepped the Pentagon for a war with Iran in the early 2000s, but this war never occurred, most likely due to the duo's lack of credibility after Iraq. It must also be stated that Iran's alleged nuclear program has been dramatically overhyped for decades. Seriously, Netanyahu was crying wolf over Iran's program as far back as 1996. In 2012, Israeli newspaper Haaretz reported that elements within both the CIA and Mossad agreed there was insufficient proof to determine whether Iran was building a nuclear bomb, despite throwing everything they had at the nuclear program. Prime Minister Benjamin Netanyahu's grandiose UN speech in 2015 claiming Iran was moments away from making nuclear weapons was contradicted by his own intelligence agencies, who stated Iran was not performing the activity necessary to produce nuclear weapons. Still, regime change in Iran and Syria has always been the ultimate goal of Israel, even in the face of this intelligence. In 2013, Israel's ambassador to the U.S., Michael Oren, told the Jerusalem Post. The initial message about the Syrian issue was that we always wanted President Bashar Assad to go. We always preferred the bad guys who weren't backed by Iran to the bad guys who were backed by Iran. According to the Post, Oren said this was the case even if the other bad guys were affiliated to al-Qaeda. What does this mean? Exactly what it says. Israel prefers al-Qaeda, the group allegedly responsible for 9/11, to the current governments of Iran and Syria. Despite multiple strikes on Iran's closest ally, and most likely due to Obama's perceived success in diverting a war and securing an agreement that ultimately benefited Iran's rivals in the form of Israel and Saudi Arabia, Obama warned Israel not to surprise him with a direct strike on Iran. Whether Obama was being sincere or not, on the face of it, this warning was successful in tying Israel's hands. However, Obama's, somewhat questionable, era is over. What we have now is Theresa May as Prime Minister of the United Kingdom and Donald J. Trump as President of the United States. Speaking to Republican policymakers in Philadelphia, Theresa May stated that Britain and the U.S. will no longer invade sovereign foreign nations in an attempt to make the world in their own image. However, May also stated that pushing back on Iran's aggressive efforts to increase its arc of influence from Tehran through to the Mediterranean was a priority. Not surprisingly, as a result of her comments and commitment to the US-UK alliance, May just secured 100% support for NATO from President Trump. When the US and UK talk about Iran's aggression and its attempts to spread its influence to the Mediterranean, they are referring to a number of different things. First, bear in mind that as explained above, there is no evidence Iran is building a nuclear bomb. Secondly, according to Colin Powell's leaked emails, Israel has a stockpile of at least 200 nuclear bombs. Iran is well aware of this, as its former President Mahmoud Ahmadinejad once stated, "What would we do with one, polish it?" Third, it is no secret that Iran's influence is spreading from Tehran to neighboring Iraq and through to Syria and Lebanon. But this in and of itself is not a crime. Building relationships with your neighbors is common sense. Iran's support for the designated terror group Hezbollah has all but been confirmed, but bear in mind that Hezbollah is one of the ground forces currently battling ISIS, the terror group that Trump singled out as his highest priority. Finally, Iran has been accused endlessly of backing rebels in Yemen. This rationale has been used to promote an egregious and violent war, courtesy of Saudi Arabia. However, even just this past week, UN experts concluded the panel has not seen sufficient evidence to confirm any direct large-scale supply of arms from the government of the Islamic Republic of Iran, although there are indicators that anti-tank guided weapons being supplied to the Houthi or Saleh forces are of Iranian manufacture. Emphasis added. So, in essence, Iran is not producing nuclear weapons, nor is it backing rebels fighting on Saudi Arabia's doorstep. This point cannot be stressed enough. Despite Iran's many warranted criticisms regarding mass executions, treatment of women and authoritarian rule, Iran is not doing any of the things the U.S. has accused it of doing as a rationale for a military strike on its people. Recent developments. Even so, The United States Congress is currently debating a bill that would authorize the use of the United States Armed Forces to achieve the goal of preventing Iran from obtaining nuclear weapons. Congress might actually pass a law that will directly allow the U.S. military to strike Iran, even before there is any evidence that they pose a threat. In a further attempt to provoke Iran, Trump's travel ban list includes Iran, a country whose citizens have never once attacked the United States. The list excludes Saudi Arabia, the country that produced almost all of the 9/11 hijackers. Even Forbes admitted that since 1975, no Americans have been killed in terrorist attacks in the U.S. by citizens of the countries included in the ban. To top things off, at the end of January, the UK and the US will take part in Operation Unified Trident, a joint exercise in the Persian Gulf that will simulate a military confrontation with Iran. Before taking office, Trump stated he would dismantle the nuclear agreement with Tehran. Trump's vow to wholeheartedly support Israel raises the possibility of granting Israel the confidence to attack Iran without any prior approval, thereby forcing the U.S. to come to Israel's aid once the fight escalates. This implied confidence is very real. Even days before Trump's inauguration, Israel attacked the Syrian government airport. How often can this happen before Syria and/or Iran respond directly? In the meantime, Iran is already responding in kind to the Trump administration's recent policy initiatives. Just this past Sunday, Iran test-fired a ballistic missile, the first known test since Trump took office. While Foreign Minister Mohammad Javad Zarif stated Iran would never use ballistic missiles to attack another country, the U.S. has already called an urgent Security Council meeting to discuss the matter. Russia said the missile test has not contravened the UN resolution on the Iranian nuclear accord, signaling where Russia's allegiance may ultimately lie. Further, Iranian state-run news site Press TV reported that if parties to the nuclear accord refrain from honoring their commitments, Iran has warned it will resume its nuclear activities to the levels that existed before the agreement was enforced. Most importantly, according to a report in the local English-language daily, The Financial Tribune, the Iranian government announced it is going to stop using the US dollar in its official statements. There is much speculation that Iraq's decision to drop the US dollar for the euro in 2000 prompted Bush to attack Iraq in 2003, so it would be wise to keep an eye on these developments. According to Alternet, Trump has assembled a team that is obsessed with Iran. Not surprisingly, in response to the Iranian missile launch, the Trump administration has officially put Iran on notice. The White House has even used the actions of the Houthi rebels in Yemen as an excuse to make sure the Iranians understand, we are not going to sit by and not act on their actions, but as explained above, even the UN has found no evidence of direct Iranian involvement in Yemen. Where are we headed? A war with Iran would be the end of the world as we know it. Iran has an enormous ground force, including countless volunteer militias who are experienced in repelling invaders, as Iraq found out the hard way in the 1980s. Nuclear powers Russia and China have warned the U.S. countless times not to attack Iran or Syria. Russia was clearly not making idle threats, as in 2015 they put their money where their mouth was and overtly intervened in the Syrian war to defend the Syrian government against US-backed mercenaries. It is not clear if Russia has the ability, or the willpower, to finance another defensive effort in support of Iran, but what Russia has been adept at, in addition to relentlessly dropping bombs, is diplomacy. Take, for example, Obama's failure to strike Syria in 2013 in part due to Russia's diplomatic intervention. China, on the other hand, is less likely to attempt diplomacy with Trump. A Chinese military official has already warned that a Chinese-US war is becoming a practical reality under President Trump, and given Trump's hardline approach to China, it wouldn't be a stretch to predict who China would side with in this dispute. Further, a Chinese general already previously stated that China would defend Iran even if it meant World War III. Additionally, NATO member Turkey has indicated it may seek to formally align itself with Russia and China, a move that could put Turkey in direct alliance with Iran considering Iran is also looking to formally join this Eurasian alliance. When will this madness end? In the words of Noam Chomsky, The United States has been torturing Iran for 60 years. The intention to take out Iran is still on the table, even with the so-called anti-establishment candidate in office. Clearly, the world cannot continue down this path towards nuclear annihilation. The current industrial war machine must be dismantled. Unsurprisingly, former Soviet leader Mikhail Gorbachev, a man with vast experience in diffusing nuclear tensions, has warned that the whole world appears to be preparing for war. His message is one that the whole world needs to hear. In the modern world, wars must be outlawed, because none of the global problems we are facing can be resolved by war, not poverty, nor the environment, migration, population growth, or shortages of resources.
Please like us and share with your social media. Please subscribe and click the bell to be notified of our new videos.
Remember to check out our playlist for important intel you may have missed.
Be sure to enter our subscriber appreciation $100 monthly giveaway. The link is in our description.
And visit our sister channel. The event is coming soon for additional intel and information.
Stay tuned.
Victory of the Light.
Event is coming soon. YouTube channel.